since you started looking at, for a long time, like preventative medicine and food quality, and so do you see any improvements? Do you see that young people, that there's more vegetarians now? Do you see that young people care more about what they eat?
So a couple things to throw in the mix here. First, there are studies, many of them courtesy of my friend and colleague at Harvard, Walter Willett, the longtime chair of nutrition at Harvard, and his team, and now Frank Hugh, who's his successor as chair of nutrition at Harvard, and the team there, looking at diet quality at scale, in particular in the U.S., but sometimes with international cohorts. And there actually is some evidence of modest overall improvement in the quality of modern diets, but some of that is policy based rather than personal choice based. So, for example, trans fat was a huge drag on diet quality. And it's largely been eliminated because it's been recognized as a bad actor. It was industrially produced. This was partially hydrogenated oil. So, we were willfully producing these trans isomers that were found to be more deleterious in every way than an excess of saturated fat. And they've mostly been expunged from the food supply. That produces an improvement. There has been some effort through programs like what we used to call food stamps here in the US, SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and other programs like that around the world to democratize access to fresh produce so more people can get it, even if there are financial barriers. So there have been some modest improvements, but extremely modest. So in countries that are relatively affluent and have notoriously bad diets, and that would include certainly both the US and the UK. I don't know the epidemiology of Hong Kong nearly as well. There's been a very, overall diet quality is low. It stayed low, but there's been modest improvement. In many countries around the world, diet quality has degraded terribly because the affluent countries are highly adept at exporting their inventions of new varieties of junk food. So there have been exposés of, essentially the massive profits in propagating obesity and type 2 diabetes in Brazil and in sub-Saharan Africa. So diet quality around the world has largely declined. So, if we look from altitude at this problem, things have mostly gotten worse. But there is a shift, I think, among young people, and it's not really about their health or their weight. It's about the planet. It's about our fellow creatures. The tonic of youth is very powerful. So young people are protected against health concerns by being young. The single greatest advantage you can have in terms of health is the tonic of youth. And so it makes sense that, when you talk about diabetes, heart disease, stroke, cancer, dementia, young people think that's not really about me. But you'd have to be living under a rock left behind by a melting glacier not to know that the planet is in serious trouble these days. And, what used to be a theoretical concern with climate change is now in everybody's face. We're dealing all the time with weather we've never seen before, droughts and floods and fires and extreme temperatures. So everybody is not just aware of it, but actively feeling it. And young people are really anxious. So in my world, my perception is that 20-somethings, 30-somethings are extremely concerned about how much planetary runway they're going to have. Is there still going to be a habitable planet for the duration of their lifespan, let alone that of their children and potential grandchildren? And are worried about all the choices they make that have implications there, whether it's use of plastic or recycling, or whether they drive a car that runs on fossil fuel, whether they have solar panels on their roof, and what they eat. And actually, the single most impactful action we can take as individuals to get at these issues would be to change our dietary pattern and to minimize our intake of animal foods, and in particular to avoid beef. The environmental costs of beef production are massive and incomparable to everything else, including other animal foods. It's really just off the charts. If you do a logarithmic scale, everything else is near the baseline, and beef, just has a high score for greenhouse gas emissions and water utilization and land use and all the bad stuff. So yes, I think there has been a shift. And so there's really good news, and that is the things we can do to optimize dietary intake patterns for human health are the same things we can and should do to optimize dietary intake patterns for planetary health. And that's fortuitous. It might have been that the two diverged and we had to choose. We can eat optimally for ourselves, or we can sacrifice some advantages for ourselves for the sake of having a livable planet. Thankfully, they are the same, either entirely concordant or very nearly so. A diet of plants, plant foods, mostly, is clearly better for human health, as I discussed previously, and absolutely better for the planet. Avoiding ultra processed food, better for human health, better for the planet, on and on it goes. And these things can be measured. And there are many studies looking at the confluence of factors in diet related to various measures of human health, all-cause mortality, cardiovascular risk, cancer risk, and so forth, and environmental impact, water utilization, land use, nitrogen use, greenhouse gas emissions. And what you wind up seeing when you plot all that is the foods that are good for both are fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds, and drinking plain water. Interesting tidbit here. In Marion Nestle's book, Soda Politics, she noted that to produce a single drinkable liter of Coca-Cola or Pepsi in its plastic bottle takes up to 600 liters of water. So skip the Coke and Pepsi, have the 1 liter of water in a renewable bottle, and save 599 liters of water every time. And that's just incredible. So just an example of how processing is highly detrimental. So I think there's more and more interest in that. And what we need to do is generate tools that empower people. So leveraging the intellectual property we have at Diet ID, we're currently working on a project called Diem, as in Carpe Diem, because we all need to seize the day while we still have a chance to save this beautiful planet. But Diem stands for Dietary Impacts on Environmental Measures. And we're basically leveraging this either or image-based approach to create an app that lets people choose a different dietary pattern that has the minimal environmental footprint. So, here's where your diet is now. Here are all the different ways you could eat that have a lower environmental footprint by this much on a 10-point scale. Which of these is a way you're actually willing to eat? And we can kind of help everybody minimize their environmental footprint in a way that works for them, because not everybody's willing to be a whole food vegan, obviously, but not everybody has to be. We can just move in the general direction of less animal food, less processed food. There are lots of different ways to do that. So we want to quantify that impact for people. And we hope to have that app, if not by the end of 2022, added to our offering in early 2023. And we hope we'll reach a lot of young people with that and empower them to make a choice that's better for them and better for the planet. There's a lot of interest there, and thank goodness, because that is the critical issue of our time.
That would be interesting. And it's a lot of it's hidden, because I don't drink Coke because it's really bad, but I didn't know that it had such an impact on the environment as well.
I didn't know that either. And, you might think, okay, I know it's better for me to drink water than Coke, but I like the taste of Coke. A young person might say that. And they might be cavalier about it because they're not worried about the calories or the sugar, because they're young and healthy and robust. But it's rare to meet a young person who doesn't have concerns about the planet. And the idea that because you drink this as opposed to water, someone else may very well go thirsty, because collectively we are depleting the world's aquifers and supplies of fresh water. That kind of rocks you back on your heels and say, okay, water will do. Thank you very much. I think that's important.
So thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate you coming onto our channel. It's great talking to you. So can you tell people where can they find some more about your work and follow what you're doing?
Diet ID has a website, of course, dietid.com. Check that out. And if you're interested in further discussion, let us know. My team will get right back to you. And I have a personal website which links to all the different things I've talked about, the various books, my wife's recipe site, Cuisinicity, my nonprofit, the True Health Initiative. That's davidkatzmd.com.
Excellent. So thank you so much. And it was great talking to you.
My pleasure, Richard. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.